This is Alexa with the Clinicians Atelier and founder of Prayer Identity, and I'm very excited to have Dr. Sonia Singh with us today.
I am a board certified internal medicine doctor and primary care doctor. I practiced in kind of traditional primary care settings until 2021. So 2020 was when my journey into direct care and micro practice started. And that's when I had my son. It was during the height of COVID. It was a really challenging year for me and my husband, who is an ICU doctor. And just the lens of new motherhood and the challenges of that year made me just reconsider how I was doing medicine and whether that made sense. And I found myself wanting more for myself and for my patients. And so that was really the driver to quitting that job and starting my own practice. I quit in 2021, and then very beginning of 2022 was when I opened my practice, which is called Juniper Modern Primary Care. It's in Houston, Texas. And over the course of planning and designing the practice, I made it my mission to serve women who I think are in the busiest chapter of their lives, often working, often with children, and kind of putting their health on the back burner. I've marketed my practice as being for busy women, and that's who I love to serve. And so now I'm 3 years in, and it was the best decision I've ever made. And I'm actually now full and have a wait list. I'm just so grateful to have found this practice model and made that jump. And now I'm started a second business, which is called Micro Practice Mama. And that is really built to help other physicians make that very scary and intimidating leap to solo practice and supporting them on that journey.
When you started your practice, it sounded like you did a little bit of planning. What did that look like? And I've seen your brand and I've actually kind of started following you from the beginning of your journey. And I always really admired how elegant your brand was. Can you talk about that a little bit?
When I first made the decision to start my own practice, I really didn't quite know what it was going to look like or who it was going to be for. I just wanted to do good medicine, take good care of my patients, and be able to be the mom and human that I wanted to be as well. It was really when I hired a brand designer who was like a local Houston brand designer who had never worked with a healthcare professional. And interestingly, actually wanted to work with somebody who was not associated with medicine because I really wanted to do something that felt different. And so I thought it'd be nice to have somebody's perspective who doesn't usually do this and who just starts fresh. She, as most, I think, brand designers do, gave me a ton of questionnaires and had me think really long and hard about who is my business built to serve? Who is that person? What are their needs? What are they like? What's going to draw them to this? And how can I show them that I'm a good fit for them? It was in the process of doing those questionnaires and answering those questions that I really started to think, who is the person I really want to serve? And why don't I just build a practice for that person? So initially I was like, it's for everyone. And then as I was going through that process, I was like, I really want to serve these stressed out, overworked, stretched thin moms. That's who I want to take care of. And that's who I feel really good taking care of and know I can do a good job because I am that person. So like I understand their plight. Once I made the leap, I'm committing to that. I'm just going to go for it. I'm not going to say this is for everyone. I'm going to say this is a practice for busy moms. Once I made that decision, everything else was so much easier because it was so easy for me to then think of that person. What kind of office would they want to walk into? What kind of website would be attractive to them? What message do they need to hear when they first check out my website? That's what I communicated to the designer. And I think she came up with a design that made sense for that audience. And so it really was a reflection of what are my values? Who do I want to serve? What do I want to communicate? That's how the brand and the practice was created.
There's a couple of points there. One, the fact that I'm actually launching a sales and marketing course here for the community soon because I have like 20 years in sales experience. And that's actually something I said in my video that I was recording this past week is everyone believes this myth of I want to serve everyone, or they get on into like, I just want to help everyone. Like you said, I wanted to provide good care. But the reality is when you do figure out who your ideal patient is, then you know how to set up the marketing. Then you know what are you creating to attract that person. And I do feel like sometimes people don't understand the value and the purpose behind branding. You said earlier, just the pretty logo and the pretty marketing material and just making it look aesthetically pleasing. It's really about pulling in and attracting that person to want to read more, to want to learn more. And then to make it even better, creating the emotional connection of I'm here for busy moms. I get it. And I am kind of curious, since the moms are putting themselves on the back burner, how do you make that connection for them to be like, you know what, maybe I need to start thinking of my health now?
I mean, I think I try to start by just getting them to recognize how much they put themselves on the back burner. I myself, like as soon as I quit my job, I had so many things on my to-do list that I needed to do. The dog needed to get updated on his vaccines. Then he needed to get groomed. My son needed to go for his first dentist appointment, like all of these things. And then I realized that my appointments, like the things I needed to do, I was absolutely always doing last. And so I think first is just like putting the problem into focus, because I think a lot of us don't even realize how we're doing that. And then reminding people that their health is like one of their most precious assets. And that is what permits them to take care of all of these other people and do all of these other things that they're doing. And it's kind of crazy how we don't prioritize it and we don't invest in it. That was just the point that I tried to make over and over. So I think it's just reminding people like, look, I understand what you're doing on a regular basis. I do those things too, but that's not how it should be. And I want to make healthcare less of a hassle for you so that you can actually do it. You can take care of it.
That's awesome. Another thing I wanted to point out too is you said you hired someone that maybe wasn't thinking from a medical lens on the branding side, which is actually how I even got pulled into DPC years ago too, was because I learned my strength was creating very personalized brands that didn't feel medical, that didn't feel like the same corporate website you see every day. The idea was really creating brands unique to the person providing whatever the type of medicine, because now it's not just primary care. You have other providers want to do direct care as well. That is something I agree with when you said that. And I love that quote, putting the problem in focus. I've never had someone quite word it that way. I always say, talk about the pain points. That's how you typically hear it. But I really love how you said, put the problem in focus, because when you begin to either show that you understand or you say, hey, do you relate to this? They begin to realize, oh, wow, well, maybe I do need this. And so instead of being very salesy, you're just helping them realize that this could be a service that they may need, and then how you can provide the care that they didn't know that they needed. And I think that's really true, because sometimes I think people struggle with like, how do I convince people? How do I get them to want to sign up? But really, it's what you said. It's putting the problem in focus of why they need you and why they would want to work with you. So I really liked that as well. Your website, it was like a template, correct? And the girl that you had hired helped you personalize it. Tell me a little bit, why did you choose that route versus doing like a full custom? Because I know sometimes people that interview with, I'm now offering semi-customization. So I'd be interested from your perspective, maybe why you decided to do a template with a semi-customization route.
Yeah, I worked with a brand designer who had created the brand and the colors and the logos and all my graphics. And then we were talking about doing a custom website. And ultimately, I bought the template and then I personalized it. So she didn't help me with any of that. She kind of gave me a loose, like she was just like, well, I like this. She told me she liked Show It as like a way to do web design. And she told me about a few templates and I found one that I liked and I personalized it. Ultimately, it was just because I wanted full control over every little bit of it. And I knew I was going to write the copy. I knew I was going to be the one that was updating it in the future. And I just thought it makes more sense for me to understand how this thing is set up and to have that control. And I think that is really going to vary for other people depending on like how comfortable they are with, technology and all of these platforms. For me now, it's just so lovely that, when my practice filled, I was just able to go on there and just say, practice is full, and change the wording of that, could take down the links for enrollment, like make those small changes on my own without asking somebody else. It ended up being about half the price to do it myself than it would have been to have her do like a full service custom design. There was a little bit of a timing piece, like I wanted it done quickly, and having the template to work with like really speeds things up. It also gave me some assurance of like, I was worried she was going to work on it for a few weeks and then come up with something and I was going to tell her to tweak it, and that back and forth takes time and energy. And with the templates, like I was kind of able to see like, okay, this is kind of what it's going to look like. And I felt more confident the end product was going to be something that I felt comfortable with. I went that route, and I think there's a lot of variation in templates, and I think some of them are just aesthetically pleasing. But I think the template that I used really helped me figure out how to design like an effective homepage that does lay out the problem, does lay out how my practice can offer a solution, does provide social proof. It really is strategic in the way that it's designed. And so I think that's been incredibly helpful as well.
That's the perfect word, strategic. I think sometimes people are just writing the same information or just the basics, or they're trying to sell the product without putting the problem in focus, like we said earlier. I think you really have to kind of navigate your user through your website. And I always tell people your homepage is like your summary page, where you're going to put thing where you kind of want to quickly tell them an overview and then feed them where they want to go by adding the call to actions or the buttons. And also, I had no idea you actually ended up tweaking the templates. So that was really good kind of hearing about that. And I've been working in specifically the healthcare niche since 16, but I've been branding since 2009. And in the last 2 years, the more doctors I interviewed or like people looking to start private practice, I realized a lot wanted to try to DIY. And that's why I ended up launching my DIY course and I ended up launching my wireframes, which is more like a drag and drop. And I use Wix Studio, but it's very similar, very, the way it looks on the front end, it looks on the back end, very easy to go in, make a quick change. And that's also why a lot of doctors have liked that platform that I typically design on. And the other thing is copywriting. I wanted to ask you about that. How did you learn to write your copy in an effective way? Because I do teach it in my course in the DIY, how to write in such a way, but how did you learn?
Honestly, I think I'm just a natural writer. I've always been that way. My grandfather was a writer. Like I've just always had like a knack for writing. I've always been writing on the side my entire career, basically. I've had personal essays published in a few different places. I have done a ton of writing classes like creative writing, flash fiction, all kinds of stuff outside of my life as a doctor. It just happens to be a skill that I think was like completely going to waste in my regular job. When it came to writing the copy, I was excited to do it. Like I think a lot of times doctors' websites, the doctor's voice is nowhere in there and you don't get any sense of who they are. And so it was really important to me to like write every word of my copy and for it to be mine. You see a lot of the FAQs and stuff on DPC websites are the same on every single website. And that's fine. It's not your thing and you don't want to write it. But it was for me, I wanted every single sentence on that website to sound like it was coming out of my mouth. The best feedback I get is when like I had a friend who I brought to my office and we walked in and she was just like, this is so you. This whole place is so you, or like they'll see the website and they'll be like, oh, that's just like, I could hear you saying it. And so that to me is like the biggest compliment. That means that it's authentic. Like it sounds like me. It conveys who I am and what my voice is. And so again, it kind of creates a cohesive experience for the patient. Because if they're reading that and they're like, oh, I like her vibe, I like what she's saying. And then they come and see me in the office and it's the same thing, that really builds a lot of trust. It makes you feel like, okay, this is the same person all around. I had this patient say a funny thing to me in my old job where I had referred them to somebody and they came back and they were like, yeah, I saw her. And like, she looked totally different than the website. And I rolled my eyes at this guy because I was just like, did you go see her because how she looked on the website or because like you needed your whatever issue taken care of? But then I was thinking about it more afterwards and I was thinking about how really what he was saying is like he kind of felt like he was like misled, that like what he saw was like totally different than what it ended up being. I think there's something to that, just like being the same and being kind of like consistent throughout all of the stuff you're putting out there. And I really think that that builds trust with patients when you have that consistency. Part of why I was like excited and passionate about writing all of that copy and making it personal.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, luckily you had the gift, but even feel like anything could be a learned skill if you just learn the way to do it. That is why the course that I created, it goes to how to create a logo with AI if you're trying to save money, how to do copywriting, how do you create your website, how to set up your basic SEO. So it really takes the student through like start to finish. Like I'm going back to cover, I think it's awesome that you wrote it because I do really believe you do need to shine through your copy. I always liked writing. I wrote a lot of poetry since I was young, similar to you. I didn't take any like formal classes, but writing just came very natural. But I would always hire copywriters to help write the copy because in the beginning I was always more focused on the design. But in the last year in 2024, I started taking on more of the copywriting for my clients. And I realized they ended up really liking what I came up with because I think after me speaking to them, I really got a feel for who they were. And I'd always make that personality shine through the copywriting. Oh, exactly what you said. So when someone reads it and then they talk to you, it feels like the same person. They feel that cohesiveness. And I try to explain that to people, but of course, sometimes they don't always understand or they don't really get the whole concept. I love stats like analytics on websites. It's really good to pay attention, like how much time are people spending reading your website or how much time are they spending on certain pages. And in Wix, they have like a read time. It actually says read time. And most of the time, my clients' pages are like read 2 to 3 times longer than the national average of healthcare websites. So it means if people are sitting there reading, they're engaging, because think about it, they may never meet you and they might just come across your website. And that's like the one time to kind of create that connection. So I love that you brought those points up because It's also not just about if your website's pretty. If there's no engaging content, then it doesn't matter how pretty it is. They're gonna click off. That was a great point that you brought up. Shifts a little bit outside of the branding as much as I love branding. I want to kind of push a little more towards marketing. What made you decide you wanted to be what you call micro practice?
Oh, well, I don't know if I set out to do that to begin with. I think I just started, and since there was such a small volume of patients, I didn't really have any need for an assistant. And one of the things I was not eager about in having a practice was the idea of managing a bunch of people and kind of being the HR, and the manager of those people. At first, I just thought, well, let's see how long I can manage without help. I've always really liked just like the intimacy and simplicity of like me and the patient and not like a lot of other people involved. So I started out that way unintentionally. And then as I grew, I just realized how many of the processes that are normally done by administrative assistants can just be done or automated or completed using other tools. And so now I'm at like 165-ish patients, and I still don't have an assistant and don't feel the need for an assistant. A combination of just, I started this way and I found ways that worked. And I'm also like a bit of an efficiency junkie. So like I was able to apply that to what I was doing to make it work. And now I feel like there's a lot of other physicians out there who have the same fear of like, oh my God, I'm going to have to manage I'm going to have to hire, manage all these staff. And I'm trying to convince people you don't actually, like, you may not have to do that at all. It's kind of become a little bit my thing now to like help people do that.
You've mentioned the word automations. Is that something that you definitely implemented? And what does that look like when you talk about automations?
Yeah, so basically, what I mean by that is creating processes that will work without you lifting a finger. For me, a big part of that is my billing platform, which is where patients sign up for my practice, my EMR, my communication platform, and my forms platform. I have like different things doing all of these, but they all communicate and are linked in such a way that like a patient can go to my website, decide they want to join, fill out the form, sign up, put their credit card information. They'll get an automatic email that has a link to the communication tool that I use, which is Spruce, and to the forms and to the scheduler. And so they can make their appointment, they can sign their records release, they can fill out their forms, and they can download the app that they can use to text, all without me ever lifting a single finger. And then they're automatically imported into my EMR from signing up there. They're automatically imported into Spruce, so I'm able to text them immediately. And then so many of the other processes, again, kind of happen that way so that I'm not having to download, upload, print stuff, have a paper clipboard that when they come in, manually go in and send emails to people. Everything is kind of happening without me doing stuff.
You have your own course. I don't know if you like officially launched, but is that some of the stuff you teach in your course, like kind of how to start your practice? Can you tell the audience a little bit? Because one thing we've been talking about a lot in other episodes is finding like a coach, finding a mentor of the type of setup or the kind of practice you'd want. Because it's not always just, oh, because they do this type of practice. You always kind of want to find someone that you like the way they're kind of running their practice. And so can you talk a little bit about that in case anyone's interested?
Yeah, definitely. So for the last few years, I've had a lot of people contact me and ask questions about like how I run the practice or how I started or what systems I use. And honestly, answering those was kind of time consuming and also kind of felt inefficient because I was just saying the same thing over and over. And also the amount of stuff that I wanted to communicate to people felt way more than I could do in like the little Zoom call or like on DM. At one point I was just like, I need to make another resource that like I can point people to. And so that's what the course became. And the course, it actually is available for sale. And I launched it as the Micropractice Mama e-course. I'm actually shifting that now to kind of be just Micropractice 101. A lot of, the feedback I got was just like, I'm not a mom, but I want to do the course. And I'm like, you're still welcome in the course. Like the material is still helpful for you. Again, that was like a population that I felt passionate about. But at its core, what it really is a course for doctors who never thought they would start a practice, because I think that's the mindset a lot of moms of young children have, which is like, they're like, I am in no position to go starting a practice right now. Like I have too much on my plate. But people who are not moms also have that feeling. And people who are, fresh out of residency also have that feeling. Like so many people have that feeling. And so really it is meant for somebody who needs that kind of not only the information and the logistical, like walking you through that, but also maybe a little bit of the mindset support of like getting you to that place of feeling confident to do this. And so, yeah, it really walks you through like the whole process of like, what is a micro practice all the way to like opening your doors. And there's a whole section on automations and efficiency, where I kind of talk about sort of how you kind of build a patient journey map and how you think about that and how you put different pieces of your processes together to work most efficiently in order to, again, avoid having to hire administrative help to do those things.
Love that. When you made the comment that you're kind of rebranding, that just even shows that little example there that sometimes the way you word something, the way you position something might push another audience away to think that maybe they're not a right fit. So I do like that you're kind of changing the name to a little more, a little broader, but still specific that it's micro practice so that more people feel like they can take advantage of learning from your experience. So I think that's a great example of just how important positioning and branding can be in general.
Or that you get anchored to something and you really want that, but then if the feedback you're getting is you're realizing like, oh, maybe this is not quite right. And that actually I had the same experience with the branding for my practice. The brand designer actually, she showed me like kind of a working copy of what she had, and it was exactly what I had asked her for. But I realized once I saw it made that it was not right for my business. And so we actually had a first version that looked totally different. It was very young and whimsical and sort of trendy. And I realized that that was not right for my business, even though that's what I had had in my mind for like several months. And so then we went in totally different direction. I think you have to constantly be aware of how what you're putting out is coming across, and you have to be open to adjusting. Otherwise, it might not reach the people you want it to reach.
Actually, really interesting. I've been designing for 15 years, and I'd say after 15 years, when someone shares a vision, if they know what they want, I'm pretty good at executing that vision. But every now and then, I'd say there was maybe 4 or 5 occasions over the 15 years where I kind of would call it miss the mark. But mainly I realized it's because the person wasn't very clear on what they wanted, thought they wanted one thing. And I like that you kind of took accountability for that. Like, I thought I wanted this. I just created this website. So I worked with the client, super sweet. The only thing was at first they thought they wanted certain colors and certain vibe and aesthetic. Designed the whole website. And when they saw it, they're like, this isn't me. And I was like, oh my God, but these are the colors you wanted. And they're like, website's beautiful, but unfortunately, we went with a completely different palette that was more quiet, less bright, but it was just more of a calmer theme compared to the first one. And of course, I wanted them to be happy. So we had like a regroup call, try to figure out a path forward. And now they love their new website. But it was that because they at least took the accountability, like in the beginning, I thought this is what I wanted. It's not that you didn't design what I told you. I'm just now looking at it and realizing this just is. I like that you said that because it's rare that it's happened, but it happens sometimes, right? You've been dreaming, like you said, you were dreaming of this is what it's going to look like. And then once you saw it, you're like, oh, wait, maybe not.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly how I had this conversation with her, which was like, you gave me exactly what I wanted, but because of all the thinking that you made me do before this, I'm realizing now that that's not what's right for my practice and my patients. So yeah, that's a hard call to make. It's hard to kill your darlings, but and that's the same thing that's happening with Micropractice Mama right now, where I'm like, okay, I will still be the Micropractice Mama, but like, I am not going to call this course for moms because I think that makes people feel excluded that I don't want to exclude.
I would say that I don't have any living children. I've never said this in a podcast, but I carried twins in 2019. And sometimes when things are geared towards mothers, it's like I don't feel like the audience, even though I'm very interested in like what's being said. But I just, after my miscarriage, my mind just completely different to like not realizing how women maybe have tried to have kids or maybe they've had miscarriages, but just because you've never seen them have children next to them, you just assume either they don't want kids or they can't have kids. And so I'm very more like sensitive. I would have so many girls write me privately when I would share. Every year I do share like my, like it would have been my little girl's 6th birthday this year. So I do like that you also opened it up a little more. We'll definitely add the link. So if someone does want to check it out, they're interested in starting their journey and they want some guidance, it'd be great for them to have access to your website. I wanted to ask you about your pricing model when you started. Especially, I would assume if it's a smaller practice, maybe the pricing looks a little different than what most people promote in. the DPC community? Did you actually sit down and do an analytics of like how to set up your pricing in the beginning? Because I know sometimes people just go with what's told to them.
Yeah. So, I think when I first started, my pricing was considered way too high and was very unpopular. And I got accused by people of, well, that's just concierge. You're not really DPC. I guess for me, I thought about what I felt like my time was worth, like per hour. And I thought about how many hours I was likely to spend with my patients. And I kind of just started from there. So I know the average price for DPC is usually around $75 per month per patient. My starting price on average was $150-ish per month per patient. And I just thought about, okay, when I take on a new patient, I'm usually spending at least 30 to 40 minutes gathering records and reviewing them before their visit. Then I'm spending an hour to an hour and a half with them on the first visit. Then I'm spending 30 to minutes to an hour reviewing their lab results after that first visit. So just in the first month alone, I'm spending several hours on them. So I tried to think about, if this person ghosted me and never came back, like what amount would I feel okay with? And in the beginning, I really didn't know how many people were going to ghost me and never come back. So I kind of started with that and tried to see, well, okay, do people find this valuable enough? I figured the market was going to tell me. If I set a price and people just were not joining, or people were joining and then canceling because they just didn't feel like it was worth the money, then I would know that I set the price wrong, And at that time, like I said, it was an unpopular opinion. And I think now, like 3 years later, a lot more people are moving towards the idea that like, actually, maybe we do need to be pricing a little bit higher for our services. You compare our pricing to therapists, health coaches, personal trainers, and they charge significantly more. I think every person's decision depends on the population they're serving, what their goals are, how many total patients they plan to have, what their practice style is. My practice style is I just spend a lot of time with people. I'm like chatty and very detail oriented. And so my appointments are so long. And I needed to have pricing that was appropriate for that. I also, after the first year, realized that I was attracting people that wanted to spend all of that time with me. And so I rented and renovated a space, which increased my overhead. And I increased the price for new patients to that average of $200 per patient per month. And that did slow my growth a little bit, but it was still very much on target for what I wanted to achieve overall. I'm at a much smaller panel size than most DPCs. Like I think most DPCs are like 400 to 600. I'm at 160. I probably will never go over 200. But again, one of my goals is to not have to hire staff. And so this is an amount that I can take care of without doing that. That's kind of how I arrived at where I am now. I think it's such a personal decision. I don't think there's like one right price that's right for all DPCs.
I love that. No, I think that's really good. And again, there's themes I figure out through all these podcast interviews. One is like, you need to figure out what your time is worth to yourself. You need to figure out what your goals are, because not everyone's goal is to have 300, 400, 500 patients. Some people are okay with 100 or 200. And I think the idea of this podcast in general too is to be like, there is no right or wrong. You need to do what's best for you, and you need to figure out what that looks like for you. Because I think a lot of people feel like they're not meeting certain marks, and then they think they're failing when really they're not really looking at this. In general, what they're doing is working for them, not looking at what the guy next door or the girl next door is doing. And so here I wanted to also create this podcast to tear down some of these beliefs of like, oh, I don't have 400 patients, I'm failing. But you're not, because maybe the 150, the 200, the 250 is good for you, and that's where you're comfortable, and you still feel like you have that work-life balance, and that's okay. So everyone's journey is definitely going to be different. I wanted to ask you, I know you'd mentioned social media was a place that you felt did attract patients. Can you talk a little bit of the type of things that you would post, or what did you feel people reacted most to that began to reach out to you?
Yeah, I was almost off social media completely before I started my practice. So I very much went back on and created a presence for the purpose of supporting my business, but really to give patients an opportunity to kind of get to know me and get to decide if I'm a good fit before they come and commit money to it. And it's funny because in the beginning, I really didn't know what was going to be effective. And I wasted a lot of time like making a really nice graphic about iron deficiency, or making like just spending a lot of time tinkering around in Canva, making something look pretty. And then it would just like go nowhere and get no engagement. And then I would just make some random one-off story about something that happened to me that day. And that would like immediately spark so many reactions and responses and questions. So what I have found on social media has been most effective is to be myself, to be authentic, to show people what I'm doing, what I'm eating, where I'm going, what my gripes are, like what my challenges are, what my thoughts are and things. And I think that really cuts through compared to a lot of accounts that for a lot of doctors, like somebody else is running and they're just kind of like making generic content and posting it. And so that's what I've tried to do is just kind of be myself. I think, for a lot of people, like they don't find me organically on social media. Usually they hear about me from somebody, a friend or something, and then, or somebody else shares something that I posted and then they'll follow. And then, it's a way to kind of stay connected with people and to build trust, that know, like, and trust factor over time. The other really effective thing for me on social media has been becoming active in Facebook groups of communities that I'm actually a part of. So like there's a very active moms group in my neighborhood and it's a very nice supportive group. And I have been active in there just as a mom. Like I will be like, hey, there's a cool excavator parked on the corner of, Byrne and 7th if any of your kids are into construction, Or I'll be like, hey, like where's the best place to get a passport photo? Like I participate in that group as a regular person. And so once in a while on Marketing Monday, if I go there and I share something health related and I say, by the way, I'm a PCP in the area, I'm like taking new patients, my practice is focused on mom, it comes across as like, oh, this is just another mom in our area who has a business. And like, maybe I'd like to support that. Whereas I think a lot of people get into groups that they otherwise have no business being in and start putting a bunch of marketing posts that usually doesn't go anywhere. No one cares for that. Trying to engage in a way that gives value to people and shows them who you are. Somebody made a post about looking for somebody who would prescribe weight loss medications. And there were a few, in my opinion, very judgmental comments posted about it. And I jumped in there and I was just like, look, I'm a healthcare professional. This is my opinion about these medications. I think you should reconsider the way you're viewing. Like I basically just gave my opinion about it. I mean, I think I probably got like 4 or 5 patients after that comment because so many people were like, oh my God, I saw what you said. And I was like, this person understands and like they're not judgmental and they clearly know what they're talking about. And oftentimes social media works in ways that people are just like not thinking about. Like they think of it as like, I'm going to make an account, I'm going to hire a social media person, they're going to make posts for me every week, and then like I'm going to get patients. And for me, that has like not been the way that seems to be most effective.
I always say social media is like a nurturing tool. Like exactly that, it helps just kind of stay relevant, front of mind. They follow you, they engage. So I want to ask you one last question. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking of starting, has started their practice, or maybe isn't meeting expectations they thought they would have?
Oh gosh. I mean, if they're thinking about starting a practice and there's fears that are holding them back, I mean, I think you just have to really test those, reality test those, talk to somebody who's done it already and talk it through and decide if those are real barriers or if those are just mindset shifts that you need to make. I think if you've already launched and you're struggling, that's like, those are like the hardest messages I get. Like when people message me and they're like, I'm a year in and I'm just like really falling apart. Part of the reason I started Micropractice Mama is because when I get those messages and I kind of look at what's going on with them, I feel like they need to start back at square one and rebuild the whole thing from the bottom up. Like a lot of those things are not quick fixes. Again, it's like this issue of cohesiveness and integrity and having a clear mission, having clear messaging, having clear values. And if you've never had that clear, sharp vision from the beginning, everything is sort of haphazard and not working together strategically. And that's why you're not making a lot of progress. And so I think like the best way is to build it right in the first place and to start with like a really clear, why are you doing this? What's important to you? What is your vision for this practice? And then to try to just exude authenticity and those values in like everything that you do going forward.
Thank you so much for today and being part of this podcast and sharing your experience and ideas that I feel are really helpful. And again, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you for having this podcast and having a space and everything that you do for the DPC community. I'm so glad we have somebody who is looking out for us in the branding and marketing and website space. So thank you for having me.